Good day, comrades. During the last while, I've watched with alarm how radical economic transformation, which is the official economic policy program of the African National Congress, increasingly came under attack within the ANC, but also generally within our South African society. It is sad to see how radical economic transformation has been turned into what could even be called a swear word, and how those dedicated ANC members who've been working for the adoption of the policy of radical economic transformation, and especially the implementation of radical economic transformation, are being attacked viciously and vilified, even to the extent where those comrades are being called counter-revolutionary, and where they are being threatened with disciplinary action by the African National Congress, possibly even suspension, and to be expelled from the ANC. In this context, I believe it is very important to put the following issues succinctly and clearly on the political table. Radical economic transformation is indeed the official economic policy program of the African National Congress. It was adopted through very clear RET resolutions at the 54th National Conference of the ANC at Nasrec in 2017. Those resolutions, among others, included the expropriation of land without compensation, the nationalization of the South African Reserve Bank, and also the restructuring of our financial institutions, our banks and insurance companies, so that cheaper capital can be more accessible to Black and especially African emerging entrepreneurs, so that they can rise to the commanding heights of our economy and take control of their own lives and their own destiny. In this context, we must understand that radical economic transformation didn't suddenly rise in 2017. It had been part of the economic and liberation policy thinking of the African National Congress since its inception in 1912. The founding fathers and mothers of the ANC, who gathered at the Wauchope Methodist Church on the 8th of January 1912 in Mangaung, understood very clearly that at the core of their liberation was the need to return the land that had been stolen from the African indigenous people by white colonists. And throughout the historical economic thinking of the African National Congress, in the African claims, and especially in the Freedom Charter that was adopted on the 26th of June 1955 in Kliptown at the Congress of the People, there was a clear understanding that the wealth of the country must be shared amongst those who live in it. That indeed those who work the land must control and own it. That there must free and equal education for every child, and especially the African and Black children who had been subjugated and robbed of proper education by Bantu education, had to be given that future, a bright future, a future of economic empowerment. Professor Chris Malekani, professor of economics at the University of the Witwatersrand, wrote a very interesting paper where he shows how the concepts of radical economic transformation and white monopoly capital, as it morphed from white colonialism to colonialism of a special type, and eventually now the control of white monopoly capitalists over our economy up to this day, has always been part of the ideological thinking of the African National Congress. So radical economic transformation is indeed in the blood and the backbone of the African National Congress. The longest serving president of the ANC, Comrade Oliver Reginald Tambo, described this very clearly. He referred to racist economic oppression And he said that racism and the economy and control of the economy goes hand in hand. And you cannot get rid of racism until you secure the control of this economy in the hands of the majority of Black and especially African South Africans. So, comrades, it cannot be in any way whatsoever that radical economic transformation is described as alien to the ANC or as a counter-revolutionary concept. Anyone who tries to do that is in fact him or herself alien to the African National Congress. The Secretary General of the ANC, Comrade Ace Magashule, was absolutely correct when 2 days ago at the Mansfield Cemetery, where we celebrated the 150th birth date of one of the great women icons of our struggle, Comrade Charlotte Maxeke, when he said that radical economic transformation is indeed the economic policy of the ANC, that it is essential for the full liberation of our country. And he pointed out that the resolutions of Nasrec confirms that radical economic transformation is central to the ideological thinking of the ANC. I want you to listen to this short video clip of Comrade Ace Magashule speaking at the Mansfield Cemetery 2 days ago.
Radical economic transformation is the policy which was adopted at Nasrec. You can't actually change it and turn it around and call it something else. The economy must be in the hands of African people. There is no country in the world where the majority are not actually the owners of the economy. Forward with radical economic transformation, forward.
Well, there you have it. Radical economic transformation is indeed the official economic policy program of the ANC. Thus, it cannot be that radical economic transformation should now be under attack even from within the African National Congress. Nor can it be that ANC comrades who are long-standing, committed members of the ANC in good standing, who work for the advancement of radical economic transformation, can be under attack. Throughout many years, many of our leaders, including also President Cyril Ramaphosa, has been talking about radical economic transformation. I want you to listen to his speech, a short extract of a speech that President Ramaphosa delivered in 2017, where he spoke about radical economic transformation and said to those gathered in the meeting that he addressed, radical economic transformation is essential for the liberation of all the people of South Africa. And those who do not want to accept it better smell the coffee. Here is President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Radical economic transformation is about placing the economy on a quantitatively different path that ensures more rapid, sustainable growth, higher investment, increased employment, reduced inequality, and the deracialization of our economy. That's when the term started seeing the light of day. And of course, we've packed it with a whole number of things, and that term still needs further definition. And I would say those who are dismissing this term, they should sit down, listen, smell the coffee. Because this may be the time for you to smell the coffee and realize that the economic transformation of our country cannot be it's non-negotiable. It has to happen, and it is going to happen. Whether people like it or not, the economy has to be transformed, and it will be transformed.
Smell the coffee. Radical economic transformation is essential, and it is not negotiable. But of course, there had been consistent attacks, especially from those who are the captains of white monopoly capital in South Africa, on this concept of radical economic transformation. They fear it because they understand that once radical economic transformation is properly implemented, they will lose their control of the South African economy. They will stop being the captains of industry. They will stop being able to exploit the majority of Black and especially African people. And that the land and the manufacturing capacity and all the other economic power that they've stolen from the people will return into the hands of Black and especially African people. And that will be the end of their many long years, centuries long exploitation of the people of our country. Preeminent amongst those is Johann Rupert, who in 2017 launched the attack against radical economic transformation, when he said that radical economic transformation is a code word for thievery, for stealing. In November 2017, Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma addressed a gathering in Durban, and she took Johann Rupert on head on. I want to listen to you what Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma said at that gathering. She said radical economic transformation is not a code word for theft. She exclaimed that radical economic transformation is absolutely essential for liberation in South Africa, and we must not be apologetic about it. Here is Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma.
We shouldn't be apologetic. And I take exception to what Johann Rupert said, that radical economic transformation means it's a code for theft. I think we should condemn that in the strongest of terms, coming from people who took our land, coming from people who are monopolizing the economy today. And of course they'll say that because they want to resist. So they want us to be scared that if we do it, they will be seen as thieves. We're not thieves. We are not thieves. Where there are thieves, they must be caught and arrested. But we are not thieves as Black people.
Yes, indeed. Radical economic transformation is essential for true liberation in South Africa. I've been under attack, and many of my fellow comrades in the African National Congress have been under attack for working for the advancement of radical economic transformation, and especially for the speedy and full implementation of the resolutions for radical economic transformation that had been taken at the 54th National Conference of the African National Congress. I want to state it unequivocally and categorically. I've never worked to try and cause disunity in the African National Congress. I've never been part of a separate grouping apart from the structures and the branches of the ANC. I've never made myself guilty of factionalism, nor has any of those comrades with whom I've made common cause within, and I emphasize that, within the African National Congress and within the structures of the ANC, in order to see this essential economic policy that is supported by President Cyril Ramaphosa, by our Secretary General, Comrade Ace Magashule, and by a member of the National Executive and National Working Committee of the ANC, Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. I've never tried to cause disunity, But all of us who work within the ANC as loyal ANC members within the branches of the ANC, who believe in radical economic transformation, will continue to advance this policy. As a member of the ANC, it is not only my right or my privilege to do so, in the light of the fact that this policy is official, but it's also my duty to do so, because it is the official economic policy of the ANC. And I would go so far as to say that every member of the ANC, every one of those more than 1 million members of the ANC, have that responsibility to do so. Anyone within the African National Congress who tries to attack us for doing so, who tries to undermine radical economic transformation, who tries to apply the brakes in the implementation of radical economic transformation, anyone who does so is out of line and is in contradiction to the official economic policy position of the ANC. Let us have no qualms. Let us not beat around the bush about it. That is the basic fact. Now, I've noted that there are attempts to undermine those of us who work for this implementation of an official economic policy program. We've been called many names, as I said at the beginning of this recording. Recently, a meeting that some of us were planning in order to discuss the decisions of the last National Executive Committee meeting of the African National Congress, and to see how we can comply with those decisions while still also being true and honest to this economic policy of radical economic transformation, had been described as counter-revolutionary, had been attacked as a factional meeting. When we noted that this manufactured outrage against a meeting of members of the African National Congress had been carefully orchestrated. You know, Noam Chomsky talks about the manufacturing of outrage by media and by those who are opposed to a particular concept or idea. When we noticed it, we decided to cancel that meeting. Not because there was anything wrong with the meeting, not because it was factional, because it was in no way whatsoever factional. But we were not going to play into the hands of those who want to cause this manufactured outrage and who want to find ways in which they can try to attack loyal members of the African National Congress and even try to suspend and expel us from the ANC. I noted that in conjunction, like dovetailing with that manufactured outrage, was also reports in the mainstream media, specifically a front page report by City Press, and I want to hold it up there. You see that headline, "Shut down. Ace Magashule supporters, it's going to cause a shutdown of the economy and of the country," was the story in the City Press. None of that whatsoever was planned. I'm not aware of anyone who sat down and said, let's shut down this country. Let's behave in a way that could be described as factional or a separate grouping. Let's act as if our fellow comrades in the African National Congress and those in the National Executive Committee of the ANC would describe us as factional, as RET forces, as counter-revolutionary. Let us not respond to them as if they are the enemy, because they are still our fellow comrades within the ANC. So yes, this propaganda that is being used against honest, committed, long-standing members of the African National Congress has been rolled out. And as Noam Chomsky also said, propaganda is the baton, the bludgeon of repressive states and repression that is used in order to destroy progressiveness. Now, I want to state it very clearly. Myself, as a member of the African National Congress, will continue to work for the advancement of radical economic transformation. And I know that hundreds of thousands of other members of the ANC are with me in making this commitment. We will not be factional in doing so. We will work within the structures of the African National Congress, within the branches. In fact, I want to call on every single branch of the ANC to engage in discussion about what radical economic transformation really should be, what its historical roots are, where it comes from within the thinking of the liberation movement of South Africa, the preeminent liberation movement, the African National Congress. I want to ask our branches to call on our National Executive Committee members to come and explain what happened in the last NEC meeting, to explain to us why they were attacking radical economic transformation. If there are misconceptions, if there are misunderstandings about what ANC members are doing in advancing radical economic transformation, let it be cleared up. But let our NEC members also answer to a situation where some of them have treated radical economic transformation as if it is a swear word, where they have actually launched head-on counterattacks against this official economic policy program of the ANC. I have recently written a paper which is a basic breakdown of what radical economic transformation should be about, and I contextualize it in the Freedom Charter. Throughout that 8.5-page discussion document, I've used ANC discussion documents, policy and tactics of the African National Congress, the balance of forces within the ANC, the African claims. I referred to the fact that the majority of young, black, and especially African people, and especially women, continue to be exploited and at the bottom of the economic pyramid in South Africa. I'm not apologetic about having written that document. It is my democratic right as a member of the ANC to do so. In the culture of the ANC, there's always been openness to discussion and debate, to participate in the battle of ideas. I did not object to the documents that had been written about the balance of forces and strategy and tactics by Comrade Tabang Makwetla or by Comrade Joel Nchitenze. I'm happy to engage with them. I'm inviting them to engage also with the document that I've written. And I hope that there will be many more documents written, so that they indeed can be a true discussion and a festival of ideas about radical economic transformation. It is essential that we do this. It is essential that we get clarity about how we must fundamentally transform our economy, because it is the duty of the African National Congress, as the leader of society, as the preeminent liberation movement, to make sure that our people will be truly free, that they can scale the heights, the commanding heights of our economy, can control this economy as the people of this country and determine their own future. So my dear comrades, even those who want to attack me, I'm reaching out to you. And together with many, many other comrades, we are reaching out to you and say, let's engage. Let's work within the structures of our beloved liberation movement, the African National Congress. Let's reassert the preeminence of our branches and of democratic processes. Let's not vilify each other. Let's not try and undermine what is the essence of what the African National Congress should always be about. That is my call. That is the refrain of the call that I hear in the words of Comrade Ace Magashule, our Secretary General, in the words of Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, and in the words of so many hundreds of thousands of South Africans who are hoping for a better future, who have supported our African National Congress at every national, provincial, and local government election since the 27th of April, 1994. They have put their hopes, their needs, their expectations with us, in our hands. They continue to go to the ballot booth, even despite often disappointment, feeling betrayed by the lack of service delivery of the African National Congress. They continue to hope for a better future. They continue to believe that the African National Congress will indeed be the leader, together with it, in providing that future. Let us not fail our people. Let us not turn on each other. Let us not allow ourselves to become the emissaries and the agents of white monopoly capital. Let us continue to understand what Comrade O.R. Tambo told us when he said that racist economic exploitation must be overcome. This is my plea, comrades. I'm not fighting, I'm pleading. But I'm not going to step one step away, and nor will many other hundreds of thousands of ANC members and millions of South Africans step one step away from the commitment for the full economic liberation of our country and the implementation of radical economic transformation, which is, and I repeat it again, because it cannot be said in many times or enough times, which is the official economic policy program of the ANC. On this one, you will find me and many others unwavering. We will continue to work within the ANC to secure a true liberated future, especially for the Black and African people of our country. Viva radical economic transformation, viva! Viva the African National Congress, viva! Amandla!
Yo, Solomon. Yo, Solomon. Yo, Solomon. Yo, Solomon. Isoja nomkhonto wesizwe owabulawa mabhune Afrika. Isoja nomkhonto wesizwe owabulawa mabhune Afrika. Solomoni, iyo Solomon, Solimahlangu, iyo Solomon, Solomoni, iyo Solomon, Solimahlangu, iyo Solomon. Waye isoja nomkhonto wesizwe owabulawa mabhune Afrika. Waye isoja nomkhonto wesizwe weSolomoni Solimahlangu weSolomoni Solimahlangu isoja nomkhonto wesizwe owabulawa eAfrika isoja nomkhonto wesizwe owabulawa eAfrika uSolomoni Solimahlangu uSolomoni Solimahlangu isoja nomkhonto wesizwe owabulawa eAfrika isoja nomkhonto wesizwe owabulawa eAfrika uSolomoni Solimahlangu uSolomoni Solimahlangu isoja nomkhonto wesizwe owabulawa eAfrika isoja nomkhonto wesizwe owabulawa eAfrika Solomoni Solimahlangu Solomoni Solimahlangu isoja nomkhonto wesizwe owabulawa amabhunu eAfrika isoja nomkhonto wesizwe owabulawa amabhunu eAfrika weSolomoni Solimahlangu weSolomoni Solimahlangu isoja nomkhonto wesizwe owabulawa eAfrika isoja nomkhonto wesizwe owabulawa eAfrika uSolomoni Solimahlangu uSolomoni Solimahlangu isoja nomkhonto wesizwe